Hello and thank you for tuning in to Millennium Movies. So before we get into this recommendation video, if you're looking for movies and shows to watch on either Shudder TV or Paramount Plus, these are topics that I've already covered previously on the channel. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the movies and shows that are worth your time on Apple TV Plus right now. So the first of two films on this list starts with the Tom Hanks war thriller Greyhound. Now this film follows real-life U.S. Navy Commander Ernest Krause, played by Tom Hanks, as he's assigned to lead an Allied convoy across the Atlantic Ocean. The only problem is that he's surrounded by multiple German U-boats every which way he goes. So this story is about it's about this impossible mission that this first time ever U.S. commander is having to take this task on. So immediately the stakes are set at an all-time high, and Tom Hanks really delivers with those stakes in this character because his powerhouse acting is on full display here. I mean, much like the ship that he commands in the movie, you could say that his acting is firing on all cylinders. And speaking of firing on all cylinders, the action set pieces in this film, the way the action is shot, it's a lot of edge of your seat thrill rides with this movie. I have nothing to complain about there. It's actually one of the stronger points of this movie, which is something that you would come to expect from an action movie or a war movie, and you absolutely do get it here. And the last thing I think that I really want to highlight for this movie is the cinematography. There's this gritty, gloomy sort of look to it, and it fits for this particular film. You know, again, we really wanted to capture, I believe they really wanted to capture that just hellacious feeling of war. Again, this is set during World War II, but the difference I think that here that matches that cinematography is that it's set on the seas, where we're usually used to seeing war movies, you know, with boots on the ground or even in the air. But I think the cinematography and the look for it and the action, the way it's shot, definitely works for this specific film, and it's a high recommendation from me. This is actually one of Apple TV's first biggest blockbusters, so in that regard, I think they really nailed it, and they really hit the ball out of the park, so no complaints on this film. The second and final film on this list is Coda, which I believe stands for Child of Deaf Adult or Deaf Adults, and the story follows Ruby, the only hearing member of an all-deaf family. They're located in Massachusetts, and the importance of this location is because her brother and her father are both fishermen, but they need her assistance with, you know, answering radios and sort of just being aware of the things that are happening around them. So every day before she goes to school, she works with her father and brother to help bring in money to support their family. But then when she goes to school, she ends up discovering this passion and a burning desire to be a singer. And she joins the choir group where she meets an eccentric music teacher played brilliantly by Eugenio Derbez. Man, he brought it on this role, man. He's the highlight of this movie. He's the standout. I hope he gets more drama work out there in the future. But anyways, that's besides the point. Back into the story. So basically what we see here in this film is that, you know, our title character Ruby, or not our title character, but our main character Ruby discovers, you know, she wants to pursue singing, but she comes from a deaf family. So it's going to be maybe difficult for them to understand this passion for her. They don't know if she's any good. It's not something they can particularly join with her and be involved with her directly and connect in that way. So it sort of creates this push and pull for her where, you know, she wants to pursue this new career and this new passion of hers, but she also, you know, is being sort of pulled back to maybe have to stay home and, you know, care for her family and help them, you know, keep their family business going as fishermen. But that's not something she really wants to do. And so we get great drama here. It's a well-directed movie. It's a well-written movie as well, well-acted movie, and all around there's really nothing but good vibes in this movie. It's heartwarming, and I think what they did with handling the family and having this one child who can hear, and just sort of seeing the inner workings of how that sort of dynamic works, where they're having to rely on her for some things, but then it sort of creates this sort of tension between like her and her brother, where, you know, he's the older one, but he feels like he's being the one who's being babied because of his disability, unfortunately. So great drama in here. It's kind of been the Sundance Film Festival darling this past couple weeks. While I don't think it's going to be on anyone's top 5 movie of the year list, it's definitely worth your time. And I think even just for venturing into this world that many of us may not be familiar with, certainly I'm not, and that's the seeing the communication and complications that people in the deaf community deal with on a daily basis. And I feel like they've handled that in this film very carefully and caringly, and very mature, I guess I want to say. At least I thought. So this movie is definitely a recommendation from me. But before I transition into the shows, I did want to say on the movie Apple TV original movies, I did watch Justin Timberlake's Palmer. I saw that Bill Murray, Rashida Jones movie On the Rocks, and I saw Tom Holland's Cherry, but none of those movies quite live up to the standard that Coda and Greyhound set. And again, your time is very valuable, so I did not put them on this list. So the first series that we're going to start off with here is the Stephen King adapted Lizzie's story. Now this series picks up after the unfortunate passing of Scott Landon, this acclaimed author who's found all this fame and fortune, and he's assassinated, unfortunately, and his wife, Lizzie, is left behind these sort of clues for her to follow by her late husband to sort of find this sort of, I guess, key to his success both professionally and personally. It's got this weird sort of far out components of supernatural, mythological, alien components all mixed in together to create this weird, fantastical story. And I'm really digging it so far. I'm only 3 episodes in, but there's a lot of good in this show so far. And surprisingly, Stephen King himself is writing the teleplay. Now, he's typically not a screenwriter, but I honestly think it's written quite well. There's so much great tension in this show. There's great mystery. There's great drama. I mean, honestly, I don't have any complaints though so far. I'm only 3 episodes into the season so far, so I guess, unfortunately, like with a lot of Stephen King works, by the end of it, it could fall off the rails. But so far, it's off to a very, very, very compelling start. And I got to say, the highlight for this series so far has been Dane DeHaan's role as Jim Dooley. This character is one of Stephen King's better written antagonists. He's this super fan of Scott, the author, and he wants to find his unpublished works because, again, he's this deranged, demented superfan who believes that, hey, I'm in love with Scott, or, Scott saved my life, and people need to see his works, and he worships Scott. He bows at his altar. It's an altar that you could say he made himself too, that we see in the story. And Dane DeHaan plays this role almost way too well. He's very disturbing when he's on scene. His presence when he is on screen just demands all of your attention. You drop everything and you listen to what he's got to say, because his character makes you very uncomfortable, and it's really good. It's really tense, and it really kind of keeps you on the edge of your seat when you're watching him. And I got to say, for the rest of the story too, again, there's great mystery. There's great sort of layers being peeled off as we sort of uncover what's really at play here, and that's what's making Lizzie's story a recommendation from me thus far. Sticking with thrillers, the next series on this list is The Mosquito Coast. Now, this story follows a family of 4 led by Justin Theroux as they're on the run from the FBI, and as they're trying to they cross the U.S. border. What they ended up discovering is that they're going to only find even more problems with Mexican smugglers, as they're sort of being hunted down by 2 different groups of people. So it creates a lot of it creates this weird sort of action adventure sort of journey for these characters. And really, I think that's the best part of this series, is just being along with this family and sort of getting to know every single character. It's really a character-driven drama, and all the performances from top to bottom. I mean, from the 2 adults to the 2 kids, everyone really brings their A game to this series, and I think that's what makes this series shine in such a limited space that it has so far. It's comprised of only 1 season with 7 episodes thus far. They're all each an hour long, but so there's not too much to bite your teeth into just yet. I believe a 2nd season is confirmed, so we will be getting more, and this series has just enough good in it to keep me looking forward to season 2. And one surprising thing that I want to add before we jump to the next series is that this show has a surprisingly good soundtrack, man, from like British sad British pop music from the 80s with Morrissey to some 2000s and late 1900s Tejano music. Like, hey, it's got it all, man. So go ahead and give this series a watch. It's definitely worth your time. And I'm not just recommending it because Justin Theroux is a fellow San Antonio Spurs / Selena fan like myself. Go Spurs, go! See is the Jason Momoa-led series set in a dystopian Earth where humans have lost the ability to see, with the exception of 2 recently born twins who both have the gift of sight. Now, this sort of poses a threat to this malevolent queen who's sort of ruling over this sort of small area or this large area where a bunch of small communities comprise this one larger area around this mountainous location. But essentially, she wants them gone quick, fast, and in a hurry. And she's sending out her entire army to kill these two recently born twins, these two poor little babies. But Jason Momoa's character, Baba Voss, again, is their surrogate father, and he wants to protect them with his entire life. And man, this queen picked the wrong person to mess with, because he is out there, chopping people's heads off, chopping people's arms off, going stabbing, wooden stakes right through their heart. He's doing everything. This action is really gory in this show. The action set pieces are really well constructed, and it's a really fun show to go across this journey on, where we basically see Baba Voss sort of moving his family and moving his location and moving his people from one place to another as they're trying to set home at a new place, where of course they have at the same time this entire army is after all of them. So it creates this nice mix of tension and action, and all of them again were sort of very nail biting for me when I was watching this. You really start to get to know some of the characters. Alfre Woodard in particular is a great supporting character. She's amazing in this role as this sort of I guess oracle-like woman who can sort of see glimpses into things that others may not be able to see into the future just a bit. But yeah, there's interesting characters. There's interesting this is a unique world that we're thrust into with C. And I think there's a lot of good here that people will want to look forward to in future seasons. As a matter of fact, by the time you're watching this video, Season 2 has probably come out. I believe it releases August 28th, with Dave Bautista set to join the cast, so pencil me in as a viewer for Season 2. The next show on this list is Defending Jacob, and it's the only limited series on this list, meaning that we're not getting any more future seasons. It's just one season comprised of 7 episodes, and that's all we're getting. And it stars Chris Evans as a local district assistant attorney, and he's basically finds himself in this unwinnable situation where his son is accused of murdering one of his fellow classmates. And Chris Evans' character is a man of the law, and he wants to adhere to those rules and the morals he has as someone in power. But this gets challenged when it comes to his own blood and his willingness to protect and love his son at any cost, regardless of the truth. And that in itself is a very unique concept, and thus we get our very juicy, drama-ridden mystery of a story here in Defending Jacob. The acting here is tremendous. Everyone here brings something different to the role that's needed for the character, needed for the story. I have no complaints on the acting front. And again, with this story, you get a ton of opportunity to explore these characters and the inner workings of their minds and the different things, the different ways something like this plays out on different people. With the mom, she's going through her own personal problems with how this affects her sort of personal life, and with Chris Evans' character, it's how it affects him and the family and how he sort of deals with that. And then with Jacob, it's it's this awkwardness of being a teenager while also being accused of such a horrendous thing like murder. And throughout the film, you really start to question. They do a good job with not being clear, but not in a frustrating way, but not being clear enough to where it's easy to decipher whether this kid is an actual murderer or is he just an awkward teenager. They really told that line excellently, and this series is honestly one of the first things I ever saw on Apple TV, and it's what made me realize, okay, Apple is really crafting some quality content right now where, yes, this is a newer streaming service, so there's not going to be a ton of things at you. Like, Netflix has millions and millions of shows and movies that no one could care, and people couldn't care less about. But with Apple, they're really prioritizing putting out really top-notch content for you to consume. And while everything's not a hit, the things that are a hit, like Defending Jacob, I mean, hey, they're just a perfect A+. Definitely an easy recommendation for me. And speaking of easy recommendations, unlike his most recent movie, Old, M. Night Shyamalan's Servant is everything you could ever possibly hope for in a half-hour horror series. This show has it all. There's great writing, great characters, great horror sequences, great suspense, great direction, great cinematography. Everything is great across the board here. I have no complaints about this show. It's got everything you could ever want. It's fast paced. The sort of the episodes really fly by, and sometimes that's a good and bad thing because you always want more. But I think the best way to sort of describe this series is just like little pieces of golden nuggets that you're consuming, golden nuggets of horror goodness. And basically, the story of Servant follows this young couple who's recently lost their son, but they hire a nanny to care for this sort of strangely humanoid doll who the wife believes is still her real life son. The only problem here, and the twist here, is that once the nanny comes in, the doll actually gets turned to life. And it's sort of like this weird, messed up Pinocchio case where it's like, whoa, what's going on here? Is this some sort of, demonology stuff with the devil? Is this like supernatural? Is this witchcraft? What's going on here? But with the way the show is written and with that 30-minute time limit for per episode, we really get a lot of time to invest our time into both the characters, the story, and the mystery at hand here. We get to peel off a bunch of layers for every single dynamic that we have going on. And honestly, I don't have a single complaint for this show. It's one of my favorite things I've ever seen in some time when it comes to horror. And surprisingly, the characters, again, are written very well. This is a shock for M. Night Shyamalan because his dialogue is notoriously not that good, and I don't believe he handles the scripts for most of the episodes. I know it's his story, and I think that's where M. Night Shyamalan stuff works best, is when he comes up with a story, but then you let someone else handle the screenplay itself. And I think that's what makes Servant work so well. And the characters are, again, the best part of this series, in addition to the horror and the mystery at hand. But Rupert Grint in particular, the acting all around is good, but Rupert Grint in particular really surprised me from his Harry Potter days to now. I think this role of the brother to the main protagonist here, he really shines in this role, and he's the standout from this series. But another standout, I guess you could say, and aside from Rupert Grint's character, is this show has a surprisingly amount of comedic levity to it, and that's something I really do appreciate in horror. So easy recommendation from me. On that note of comedic levity, you like that transition? Our last three series are all half-hour comedies that have a good mix of drama and comedy to them. So let's start off with Rob McElhenney's Mythic Quest. Now this series is equal parts crude, charming, and creative. And it's sort of got a mix of It's Always Sunny and Community. And it's got actors from both series in this. So if you're a fan of either one of those, I think you'll find that this is a nice blend of both. And let me explain how. So Mythic Quest is a series that follows a group of eccentric game developers who are working to put out new content for the most successful online multiplayer game in the world. But that's not really the main story here. What the main story here is the shenanigans and all the crazy stuff they get into in the meantime while they're working to release, or in between working to release, this new content for this game. And the cast here is, again, oddly charming in this sort of crude, cruel way, whether it's towards each other or towards other people. But particularly, I think the way it's inspired by It's Always Sunny is there's some foul-mouthed, R-rated material coming out of the characters. Some of the characters' mouths, like CW, played brilliantly by F. Murray Abraham. He's one of the standouts of this series. But then it's also equal parts Community, in that we have sort of these bottle episodes where we sort of get out of the main storyline, but we see different things happening that tie back into beautifully the materials and the characters that we know to be happening in the main timeline of the story. And those bottle episodes in particular really stand out in ways in that the material that they showcase. It tackles things like being a creative in a business market, or mental health, or just human compassion or forgiveness. Those types of things are typically not something that we see in these sort of half-hour, kind of raunchy comedy shows. But I think it's a welcome change of pace, and for that, I really appreciate this series, and I think that it's something that you'll really enjoy if you're a fan of, again, either It's Always Sunny or Community. And even if you're not that big of a gamer, I don't think that's going to play into your enjoyment of the show that much, because that's a very small thing to this show. That's just their workplace, but it's not necessarily always what this show and the characters are thinking, in a sense. But if you are a gamer, I think it'll only enhance your viewing that much more. Next up is Mr. Corman, and it stars Joseph Gordon-Levitt as a 5th grade teacher who struggles with anxiety, loneliness, and forfeited dreams of a music career, all while having this growing suspicion that maybe he might just suck as a person. Now, this series, I think, much like Mythic Quest, does a great thing in that it brings drama into comedy and sort of gives us ways to tackle real issues, again, like loneliness and anxiety, but look at it in a way where we can poke fun of it, but also take it seriously at the same time. It's a very fine line that you have to balance, but I think both, much like Mythic Quest, I think that Mr. Corman does that brilliantly here, and I think that Joseph Gordon-Levitt, with the way that he's written this show and the way that he acts in this show, I think that this is something that he takes very, very seriously, and I think you can start to see that when you start looking at his career and the roles that he picks. Much I think like Tom in 500 Days of Summer. I think that these sort of stories about dudes being lonely and trying to express themselves in ways that they just can't, but trying to find their place in the world as well. I think that's something that maybe Joseph Gordon-Levitt has maybe dealt with in real life, and he brings to this role in a way that I think can maybe sort of get people like me and maybe hopefully others like you who may be watching this video to sort of look within themselves and maybe hopefully inspire change. I mean, that could just be the emotion of Filmboy within me, but I like to think that that's what he's doing here, and I really appreciate the show thus far. There's only 3 episodes into this series as of this recording because it's a brand new series that just started in August, but I'm really digging it. And again, there's some awkward, funny situations that the character gets put into, but there's some also deep drama that we get to, and there's also some colorful, trippy sequences that we get to enjoy in this show. So it's got a bit of everything, and I think if you're a fan of Joseph Gordon-Levitt or just want some half-hour comedies to watch, this might be a show that you might be really into. And finally, you knew it was coming, Ted Lasso, the best comedy series I've had the pleasure of watching in a long, long time. What can I say about this series that hasn't already been said? I mean, it's heartwarming, wholesome, charming, clever. It's got everything. It's a home run. This is definitely Apple TV's bread and butter, and they know it because, of course, it's been renewed for multiple seasons now. Jason Sudeikis was put on this planet to play the role of Ted Lasso. I mean, this show has such good vibes, and you honestly don't even need to worry about not being a fan of soccer or football, because I'm certainly not, but that takes a back seat to the characters. The characters are at the forefront of this series, and we're given a chance to be endeared to so many of them, from our leads like Ted Lasso to even side characters like Roy Kent. There's a character for everyone on this show, and it's nothing but good vibes, and I feel like everyone just needs some Ted Lasso in their lives. I mean, it's just, there's not a single bad bone in this show's body. There's just not. I mean, it's written well, the dialogue is clever, it's very witty. Yeah, man, this show is just a good time. So just watch it. You won't regret it, trust me. I haven't heard a single person say they didn't like Ted Lasso. So if you're that one person on this video like, yeah, Ted Lasso, get out of here. Give me your thumbs down and get out of here. Scram. Get out! But anyways, guys, this has been my Apple TV recommendations video. If you've seen some of the shows, let me know what you think in the comment section below. And if you're going to check some of these shows or movies out, please watch them. Come back here. Let me know what you think of them, because I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. But if you enjoyed this type of movie news content or streaming service recommendations videos, well, consider subscribing to the channel and tagging along for the future, because I do plan on putting out more videos just like this, so long as you guys are here to watch them. But until next time, guys, this has been it for me. I've been Millennium Movies, and I'll see you all next time.